The days after Evelyn's passing felt unreal, like time itself had become thick, slow, almost syrupy. The house was too quiet, not peaceful quiet, the kind that presses against your ribs and makes it hard to breathe. Andrew drifted through those days like a ghost. He didn't eat unless I put food in front of him. He slept in hour-long fragments, waking with a sharp inhale each time, as if for a split second he still expected Evelyn to be beside him. That moment of remembering was torture to watch, every gasp a tiny death. 3 days after she passed, he wandered into the kitchen looking disoriented, his hair unkempt, his eyes rimmed with red. He opened the cupboard, stared into it, closed it, then opened it again. He wasn't looking for anything. He was lost. "Andrew," I said softly, "sit down. I'll make you something." He didn't sit, didn't blink, just moved to the refrigerator and stared into it like it might explain why his world had collapsed. Finally, in a voice so quiet it barely reached me, he whispered, "She loved strawberries." I stepped closer. "Every Sunday," he swallowed hard, "I made her pancakes with strawberries, and she'd steal them right off the cutting board, saying it made the pancakes taste better." A thin, broken smile flickered over his lips, then vanished. "I stopped making them near the end. She couldn't eat, and I stopped trying." He sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. I wrapped my arms around him, feeling his whole body shake. "I miss her," he gasped. "I miss her so much it physically hurts." "I know. I miss her too." He clung to me like he used to when he was small, when scraped knees felt like the end of the world. Only now the wound was something no one could bandage. Evelyn's memorial was planned for the end of the week. Every time I mentioned it, Andrew stiffened, shoulders tightening like he'd been hit. "I don't know if I can do it," he whispered one night, curled on the couch with her blanket wrapped around him. "You can," I said gently, "and you have to. They'll judge me." "Probably," I said honestly, "but their judgment isn't the punishment. You're already living that." He didn't argue. He just stared at the blanket, tears collecting on the fabric. "What if her parents hate me? What if her sisters look at me and see a monster?" I hesitated, because, truthfully, they might. "They loved her," I said finally. "They know she loved you. That still matters." He wiped his face with the back of his hand. "I miss her," he gasped. "I failed her." "Yes," I said quietly, "but you stayed until her last moment, and she forgave you." His breath broke. He nodded, but barely. The day before the memorial, Evelyn's mother, Claire, called me. She asked if Andrew and I could come over to look through Evelyn's things, choose items for the service, share memories. I waited until the next morning to tell him. When I did, his face drained of color. "I can't," he whispered instantly. "Mom, I can't walk into that house." "You can," I said. "They asked for you." "What if they know?" he choked out. "What if Evelyn told them everything?" "I don't think she did. But what if she wanted them to know? What if she wanted someone to hate me because she couldn't?" Evelyn didn't want hate, not even at the end. He closed his eyes, tears slipping free. "I don't deserve their kindness." "Then accept it anyway," I said softly. "This isn't about you, it's about her." He let out a trembling exhale. "I'm scared." "I know," I murmured, taking his hands, "but you won't face it alone." On the drive to Claire's house, Andrew didn't speak. He held Evelyn's folded blanket tightly in his lap, his knuckles white, his breath uneven. When we pulled into the driveway, he froze. His voice came out in a cracked whisper. "I can't go in. Mom, I can't." I leaned toward him, touching his cheek gently. "Yes," I whispered, "you can." He shook his head, a tear sliding down his face. What if they hate me? Then we'll stand there together, I whispered, pressing my forehead lightly to his. He shuddered and nodded. Before we even reached the front door, it opened. Claire stood there, pale, exhausted, her eyes swollen from days of crying. For one terrible second, I thought she might recoil. Instead, her face softened, and she stepped forward. And she wrapped her arms around Andrew. Andrew let out a sound I'll never forget, somewhere between a sob and a collapse, and he crumbled into her embrace, clutching her as though he might fall apart completely if he let go. "Oh, sweetheart," Claire whispered, her tears falling into his hair. Andrew shook with sobs, raw, loud, unrestrained. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "I'm so, so sorry." Claire only held him tighter. "I know," she whispered, and she knew too. And in that doorway, between grief and forgiveness, Andrew finally broke open. I stood behind them, tears streaming down my face. Because forgiveness, especially the kind you have no right to ask for, feels like a blessing and a wound at the same time. It broke us all a little more, and somehow that was the only thing that felt right. Claire released Andrew only when he finally loosened his grip, his hands trembling, his breath uneven, his voice swallowed by grief. "Come in," she murmured, touching his arm gently. "We set aside some things for you." The living room was a shrine to Evelyn, photos on every wall, her smile frozen in moments of joy. Andrew stopped the moment he saw one picture in particular, Evelyn laughing, head tilted back, eyes squeezed shut the way she always did when something truly delighted her. His fingers hovered over the glass but didn't touch. "That was her birthday," Claire said softly behind him. "The year you made that cake that sank in the middle." A shaky half-laugh, half-sob escaped him. "I decorated it with strawberries," he whispered. "She said the crooked shape made it taste better." Claire smiled faintly. "She said you made everything better just by loving her." Andrew's breath hitched, his face tightening as guilt surged through him again. "I didn't," he choked. "I failed her." Claire's eyes softened, though grief lingered underneath. "Andrew," she said, her voice steady but gentle, "when she looked at you, she didn't see a failure. She saw her husband." His knees nearly buckled. He grabbed the back of a chair, swallowing rapid breaths. "She deserved someone stronger, someone who didn't run." Claire laid a hand over his. "She chose you. Remember that." Andrew's eyes filled, and he let out another small, wounded sound, barely a sob, but enough to break the air in the room. Evelyn's younger sister, Anna, walked in then. Her eyes were swollen, her expression tight. When she saw Andrew, she stopped. Something passed between them. Pain, fear, uncertainty. Andrew's whole posture changed. His shoulders hunched, his breath quickened. He braced himself for anger. Anna stepped closer. "You were her everything," she said softly. Andrew's head jerked up, stunned. "She told me," Anna continued, her voice trembling. "Even when she was hurting, even when she could barely speak, she talked about how much she loved you." Andrew's jaw quivered. "But I wasn't." "She didn't want someone perfect. She wanted you." Andrew covered his face with his hand, a broken sound slipping through his fingers. Tears spilled between them despite his efforts to hold them in. Anna hesitated, then moved forward and wrapped her arms around him. He collapsed again, his body racked with deep, shaking sobs. Anna held him through it, crying with him. "She loved you," she whispered. "We all saw it." "I loved her," he gasped. "I loved her so much." "I know." The honesty between them was almost too raw to witness. I had to look away, my own heart aching. When Andrew finally managed to breathe steadily again, Claire gestured toward a small room down the hall. "She set everything in here," she said. Inside were several boxes, neatly labeled. Andrew approached them as if they were holy. Claire nodded toward the first one. "She wanted you to have these." Andrew lifted the lid. Inside were dozens of letters, old notes they'd written each other over the years, dates, little jokes, tiny confessions, pieces of their love story preserved on paper. His hands shook as he opened one. He read silently at first, then he froze. His lips parted. "Andrew?" I asked gently. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Mom." He held the letter slightly toward me. The first line read, "If anything ever happens to me, please don't carry guilt. Loving you has been the greatest joy of my life. Remember me gently." Andrew let out a choked cry as his knees gave out beneath him. He fell to the floor, clutching the letter to his chest. Why? Why was she so good to me? Why did she love me when I didn't deserve her? Claire sank to the floor beside him, placing a hand on his shaking shoulder. "She loved you because she knew your heart. She saw the man you were trying to be." Andrew shook his head violently, tears streaming. "I didn't deserve her forgiveness." Claire's voice softened, almost breaking. "She didn't forgive you because you earned it. She forgave you because she loved you." He folded into himself, crying so hard I felt it in my own bones. I dropped to my knees beside him, pulling him against me. He leaned into me like he was collapsing through every layer of pain he'd ever carried. "It hurts," he whispered through broken breaths. "Mom, it hurts so much." I know," I murmured, stroking his hair. "I know." Claire nodded softly. "She wanted you to keep living. She wanted you to heal." Andrew closed his eyes, tears falling again. "She didn't deserve to die like that, not without knowing I still loved her." His voice cracked in a way that shattered something inside me. "She knew," I said. "She knew, Andrew. She felt it. She heard it in your voice. She saw it when you held her hand at the end." Anna knelt beside him, adding quietly, "She always knew." And in that small room, surrounded by Evelyn's letters, her memories, her love, grief and grace wrapped around all of us. It was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. We stayed at Claire's house for hours, though time felt strange, stretching and collapsing all at once. Grief has a way of pulling people together, binding them with threads of pain and love so tight they feel almost indistinguishable. At some point, Andrew grew quiet, not numb, just quiet, the kind of quiet where every breath sounds like a confession. He sat on the floor, surrounded by Evelyn's letters, her sweater draped around his shoulders like she was still trying to warm him. Each time he opened another envelope, his lips trembled, his eyes softened, and then tears would spill before he could stop them. I watched him pick up a small envelope sealed with a heart sticker. He hesitated before opening it, almost frightened of what he might find inside. When he unfolded the paper, he gasped softly. "What is it?" I asked gently. He swallowed, and his voice came out as a whisper. It's dated 2 days before she went into the hospital." His hands shook as he held it up. He read it aloud, though his voice cracked on nearly every word. "Andrew, if my body gets tired before my heart is ready to love you, I want you to remember this. You were the best decision I ever made, even when things were hard, even when you felt far away. I always knew you loved me. If I leave this world early, don't let guilt chain you to the past. Live, grow, be the man I always saw in you, and please, please love again someday. Someone should feel the warmth I did when you held me. Your wife forever, Evelyn." Andrew's face crumpled before he even finished reading. A single tear fell, then another, then he broke into sobs so painful I felt my own ribs ache. He clutched the letter to his chest. "She wrote this while I was—" His voice cut off. He couldn't say it. He didn't have to. Claire wiped her eyes, her voice trembling as she spoke. "She never stopped hoping you'd come back to her, even on the days when you didn't." Andrew let out a wounded sound, half cry, half whisper. He doubled forward, pressing his forehead against the floor. "I don't deserve her words. I don't deserve one sentence of this." Anna knelt beside him, rubbing his back gently. "She didn't write it for a perfect man. She wrote it for the man she loved." He shook his head hard, tears dripping onto the letter. "I failed her." "You failed, but you came back, and you stayed, and she died holding your hand. That's what she wanted." Andrew covered his mouth, his shoulders shaking. "I wish I could see her one more time, just once. I'd tell her everything. I'd tell her how sorry I am, how much I—" He broke again, unable to speak. I moved beside him, pulling him into my arms. He leaned against me like he was inches away from shattering. "Sweetheart," I whispered, brushing his hair back, "she knew you loved her. She forgave you. She left you her peace." He shook his head against my shoulder, crying openly. "I don't know how to live with this. One day at a time, one breath at a time." Eventually, Claire guided us toward Evelyn's childhood room. She said there were things she wanted to give Andrew, things Evelyn had treasured even before they met. Walking into that room felt like stepping into her spirit. The walls were pale yellow, decorated with pictures she painted years ago. Her books were neatly lined on shelves. A small vase held dried roses Andrew had given her on their 2nd anniversary. He froze when he saw them. He walked over slowly, touching one of the petals that still held its shape, soft yet fragile. "She saved everything I ever gave her," he whispered. "Everything," Claire confirmed. Andrew let out a tiny, broken laugh. "I didn't deserve her when she was alive, and I don't deserve her memory either." Claire stepped in front of him, lifting his chin gently so he'd look at her. "Andrew, she didn't love you because you were perfect. She loved you because you tried, because you wanted to be better, because she saw goodness in you long before you ever saw it in yourself." His lips trembled, his breath catching. "Be the man she believed you were. That's how you honor her." Andrew closed his eyes as tears spilled over again, but something softer appeared in his expression. Something small and fragile, but there. A desire to change, a desire to heal, a desire to become the man he should have always been. As we walked back toward the living room, Andrew stopped suddenly, his hand pressed against the wall, steadying himself. "What is it?" I asked. He inhaled shakily. "I can hear her laugh, right here, in this hallway." His voice cracked into a whisper. "It was so light. God, her laughter was everything." He closed his eyes, letting the memories wash over him. "She used to run down this hallway with socks on, so she slid across the floor. She'd scream and laugh at the same time. She'd crash into me and pretend it was my fault." His breath shook violently. "I should have loved her better." I touched his arm gently. "You love her now." He nodded slowly, tears forming again. "More than ever." Claire stepped forward, resting her hand on his shoulder. "She knew that too." Andrew wiped his face with his sleeve, looking exhausted but determined. "I want to speak at the memorial," he whispered. Claire blinked in surprise. "Are you sure? You don't have to." "I do," he said firmly, though his voice trembled. "I need to, for her." I felt a swell of pride in my chest, aching, bittersweet pride, because this wasn't the same son who hid from his responsibilities. This was the son Evelyn saw inside him, the son he wanted to become. As we prepared to leave, Claire handed Andrew one final item, a small box wrapped in white paper. "She wrote this for you," Claire whispered. "She gave it to me months ago and told me to hold on to it for when Andrew needs it most." Andrew stared at the box with wide, trembling eyes. "What's inside?" he asked softly. Claire shook her head. "I don't know. She sealed it herself." Andrew clutched it to his chest, exhaling shakily. "When you're ready," Claire added softly, "not before." He nodded, holding it as though it were something fragile, sacred. We hugged Claire and Anna goodbye, and as Andrew stepped outside, he whispered, "Thank you for not hating me." Claire touched his cheek gently. "We never hated you. Grief can make us angry, but love doesn't just disappear." He broke into tears again, silent this time. Claire hugged him once more. "Go heal," she whispered. He nodded, and we walked to the car. When he sat down, he cradled the small box in his hands, staring at it with tear-filled eyes. "Mom," he whispered, his voice hardly a breath, "how do I open something from someone who's gone?" I looked at him, my heart tightening. "When you're strong enough, and when your heart tells you it's time." He nodded, pressing the box against his forehead like he was holding a piece of her soul. "I'll try," he whispered. "For her, I'll try." When we got home that night, the house felt wrong. Not quiet, hollow, as if grief had swallowed all the sound before it could reach the walls. Andrew didn't go to his old room. He didn't turn on the TV or sit on the couch like he used to after bad days. He walked straight to the kitchen table, sat down, and placed the little box Evelyn left behind right in front of him. He didn't touch the lid, just stared at it like it was a door he wasn't brave enough to open. From the doorway, I watched his shoulders curl inward, the way a person physically tries to hold themselves together. After a long stretch of silence, he whispered, "Mom, I can't breathe." I rushed to him, kneeling beside his chair. "Honey, look at me. You're here. You're safe." He shook his head, tears gathering but refusing to fall. "If I open this, she'll really be gone." My heart cracked. "She's gone either way," I said softly, placing my hand over his. "But this is her last gift. Let it reach you." He swallowed, voice trembling. "Why am I so scared?" "Because love is frightening, and losing love, that's the kind of pain a heart isn't built for." He gripped my hand like he was drowning. "Can you stay?" "Always," I whispered. We sat like that, two people holding the same wound, until exhaustion finally pulled him under. He fell asleep on the couch, and I covered him with a blanket. I couldn't leave him. A mother's instinct doesn't fade, it just reshapes itself around their suffering. Around 3 a.m., he stirred. He didn't see I was awake. He just sat up, pressed his palms to his face, and whispered into the dark, "Ev, I miss you." He held the box against his chest, like a child with a stuffed animal. Then he cried, small, breaking sobs that sounded like the remnants of a man who once believed in forever. I closed my eyes, giving him the dignity of privacy. Some grief is sacred. In the morning, he barely touched his food. After a long, heavy silence, he whispered, "Mom, can we go to the cemetery? I need to talk to her." His tone, God, it was the voice of a man who needed forgiveness from the only person who ever truly understood him. The drive was silent. By the time we parked, his hands were shaking so badly he couldn't even unbuckle his seatbelt. I reached over and held his hand. "You can do this." At Evelyn's grave, he collapsed to his knees instantly, like gravity finally claimed him. "Ev," his voice cracked apart. "I'm here." He rested his forehead against the headstone, his whole body trembling. "I'm so sorry," he cried. "I was weak, I was selfish, and I can't," his voice broke, "I can't live with how I failed you." Watching your child fall apart in front of you, knowing you cannot lift the weight they carry, that is a specific kind of cruelty only parents know. He kept going, words tumbling out like confession. You deserved someone better, someone steady, someone who didn't disappear when you needed him most. He kissed the stone. You deserved better than me. I stepped beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. She didn't want better. She wanted you. Even when you fell short, she chose you. He shook his head in disbelief. Why? Because real love isn't logical, it's loyal, and hers outlasted everything. He cried again, raw, broken, human. When he finally pulled back, wiping tears from his face, he whispered, "Mom, I think I'm ready to open the box." "Here?" I asked softly. He nodded. "I think she should be here when I do." His hands trembled as he lifted the lid. Inside lay a single folded letter and a tiny silver locket. He gasped, soft, devastated, and pressed his fist to his mouth to muffle the cry that followed. The locket opened to their wedding photo, Evelyn laughing, radiant. On the opposite side, engraved in tiny, delicate letters, "You were enough. You always were." Andrew let out a sound, half sob, half plea. He opened the letter with shaking fingers. His eyes barely scanned the first line before he crumpled forward. I took the letter gently from his hands, my own vision blurred with tears. And I read, "My dearest Andrew, if you're reading this, my time ran out before yours, so I'm giving you the one thing you deny yourself, freedom from your guilt. I know you regret stepping away from us, and I forgive you, not because I loved blindly, but because I loved truly. I saw the man you wanted to be. Become him now, for me, for you, for the life still ahead of you. Wear the locket when you feel lost. I'll be with you. Don't bury your heart with mine. Live, Andrew. Love again. You deserve happiness too. Your Evelyn, forever your wife." When I finished, Andrew collapsed against me, sobbing like a boy again. I don't deserve her forgiveness. I don't deserve any of this. I held him, stroking his back. Forgiveness isn't earned, it's given, and she gave it without condition. He gripped the locket to his chest. I'll be better. I'll be the man she believed I could be. I closed my eyes and kissed his forehead. I know you will. And for the first time in a long, long time, I believed it. After Andrew opened Evelyn's letter at the cemetery, he went completely still. No words, no shaking, just a man quietly breaking open. He held the locket against his chest, tears slipping down without sound. And yet, something in him had shifted. Not repaired, not relieved, but opened, the way a wound opens before it can heal. After a long time, he lifted his head and stared at Evelyn's name carved in stone, His expression wasn't the desperate grief I'd grown used to. It was sorrow, yes, but threaded through it was something new. Resolve. "I'm going to be better, Ev," he whispered. "I promise you, I'm going to live the way you wanted me to." His voice cracked, but he didn't crumble, not this time. He stood, kissed the top of the headstone, and whispered, "Thank you for loving me more than I ever deserved." When we walked back to the car, he didn't need to lean on me. His steps were slow, heavy, but steady. It was the walk of a man who had decided to change. On the drive home, he stared out the window, fingers wrapped around the locket hanging against his chest. "Mom," he said softly. "Yes, sweetheart? Do you think people can come back from their worst mistakes?" I studied him, how small he looked, yet how hard he was trying to stand tall again. "I think people can rise from anything, if they choose to." He swallowed hard, eyes dropping to the locket. "I want to. I know you do," I whispered. He hesitated, voice trembling. "I'm scared." "Of what?" "Living without her, messing up again, falling apart." I reached over and squeezed his arm. "You will fall apart. You'll have days where everything hurts again, but grief doesn't mean you're doing life wrong." His breath shuddered. "You won't be alone," I said softly. "Claire is here, Anna is here, and I'm here. And Evelyn, she left you her love. That doesn't fade." He wiped his eyes and nodded. "I want to make her proud." "You already are," I whispered. A small smile, trembling but real, touched his lips. It was the first light I'd seen in him in months. The days that followed were heavy, but different. Andrew didn't run from his grief anymore. He walked into it. He cried when he needed to, talked when he could, and stayed quiet when words were too small. Every morning he visited Evelyn's grave. Some days he stayed only minutes. Some days he was gone for hours. He wore the locket every day, tucked beneath his shirt, like a heartbeat that wasn't his own. One morning, I found him at the dining table, bent over a notebook. He didn't notice me. He was writing with an intensity I hadn't seen since Evelyn fell ill. Tears were dripping onto the page. "What are you working on?" I asked gently. He looked up, surprised, but not ashamed. "A letter," he said quietly. "To Evelyn." My throat tightened. "Do you want to share it?" He shook his head slowly. "Not until it's done." I touched his shoulder. "I'm proud of you, Andrew." His voice trembled. "I just want her to know I heard her, that I won't waste her forgiveness." "She knows," I said softly. He closed his eyes and leaned into my hand. A week later, the day of Evelyn's memorial arrived. The church was full. Friends, co-workers, neighbors, people who had been touched by her kindness. You could feel the ache in the room, a shared heartbreak. Andrew stood at the front, clutching a small card with his speech. His hands were shaking so violently, I worried he might drop it. When his name was called, he inhaled sharply and walked to the podium, not confidently, but courageously. He paused, looked out at the crowd, then down at the locket. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft and breaking. "Evelyn was the best part of my life." The church went silent, so silent you could hear the breath of the person next to you. "She was light when everything else felt dark. She loved me on days when I couldn't stand myself. She believed in who I could be, even when I wasn't that man yet." Sniffles rippled through the room. "I wasn't the husband she deserved every day. I made mistakes I will carry forever." His voice cracked. "But even after she passed, Evelyn taught me something. Love isn't about being perfect. It's about choosing someone, even when they're broken." He pressed his hand to the locket. "She chose me, and I failed her, but she forgave me anyway." A hush fell, thick with emotion. "I will spend the rest of my life honoring her," he whispered. by becoming the man she believed I could be, a man worthy of the love she gave so freely. He smiled through the tears. Thank you, Ev, for loving me at my worst and showing me who I could be at my best. When he stepped back, the entire room rose to their feet, not out of obligation, not out of pity, but out of grace. He returned to his seat, trembling. I took his hand. "You did it," I whispered. He leaned into me, voice shaking. I hope she heard me. "She did," I murmured. "She always hears you." After the service, Claire approached him. Her eyes were red, but her expression was soft. When she hugged Andrew, it was the first time in months it felt stiff or strained. "She'd be proud," Claire whispered. Andrew broke into tears again. "I'm so sorry for everything." Claire shook her head gently. "We all break when life hits too hard. What matters is finding your way back." Anna hugged him next. "You honored her today." Andrew's voice cracked. "I loved her." "We know," Anna said softly, holding him tighter. On the drive home, Andrew finally released a breath he'd been holding for far too long. "Mom? Yes, sweetheart? I think I'm ready to let her go." Tears burned my eyes, but my voice stayed steady. "Letting go doesn't mean forgetting." "I know," he whispered. I think she'd want me to start living again." "She would," I said gently. "She told you herself." He touched his wedding ring, his thumb brushing over the metal. "I'll never stop loving her." "You don't have to," I whispered softly. "Love doesn't disappear. It just changes shape." He smiled softly, fragile, aching, but honest. And for the first time since Evelyn died, his grief didn't look like a storm. It looked like sunrise. The weeks after the memorial were quiet. Uncannily quiet. Not empty, not hollow, just still. Like the world understood my son needed silence to rebuild himself piece by piece. Andrew spent long hours on the porch, hands wrapped around a mug, eyes fixed on the trees as though waiting for Evelyn's voice to rustle through the leaves. He read her favorite books. He cooked her old recipes. Sometimes he'd laugh, soft, surprised little bursts, and I'd hear the echo of the boy he used to be. Other days, grief wrapped around him like a tidal wave, folding him over the kitchen counter with his hands pressed to his chest, gasping like he was drowning. Grief is like the ocean. Some days the tide kisses your ankles. Some days it drags you under. I stayed close no matter what the tide brought. One night, he walked into the living room with Evelyn's box of letters and sat beside me. "I read one every night," he said softly. "It hurts, but it helps." "That's what love does," I whispered. He ran a finger along the lid. "You know what's strange, Mom?" "What?" "She never wrote about dying. Not once. Every letter is about living, about us, about silly memories, about hope." He let out a breathy laugh, shaking his head. "She wrote about wanting a puppy someday, a puppy while she was sick." A familiar ache expanded in my chest. Hope was her superpower. He swallowed hard. "I wish I had her hope." "You do. You're still fighting. That's hope." He looked at me with wet eyes. "Thanks for not giving up on me." I cupped his cheek. A mother doesn't give up, not when her child is fighting his way back to himself. He leaned into my touch, eyes closing. The next morning, something shifted. Andrew came downstairs wearing his old running shoes, the pair that had lived untouched in the back of his closet for years. He stood at the bottom of the stairs, looking uncertain but determined. "Going somewhere?" I asked gently. He nodded at his feet. "I thought I'd go for a run." "A run?" Such a simple thing, and yet it felt monumental. "That's wonderful," I said. "What if I fall apart out there?" he whispered. "Then you fall, and then you get up. You're allowed both." His lips trembled into a tiny smile. "I'll try." And he did. He ran every morning, short distances at first, then longer. He'd come home breathless, flushed, and alive in a way I hadn't seen in months. Sometimes he'd laugh on the porch. Ev would have teased me for running so slow. Other times he came back with tear tracks down his cheeks. But he always kept going. Every step forward was a promise to Evelyn and a promise to himself. A month later, he placed a letter on the kitchen table. "Mom, this one's for you." "For me?" I blinked. He nodded, voice softening. "Evelyn wrote it. I think she wanted you to have it when I was stable enough, and today I think I finally am." My hands shook as I unfolded the paper. Evelyn's handwriting swept across the page, and my vision blurred instantly. "Dear Margaret, thank you for raising the man I fell in love with. Thank you for holding him when I no longer could. He will make mistakes. He will fall. He will break. But he will always find his way back if someone believes in him. Please be that person when I'm gone, and remind him of this when he forgets. He is worthy of love, even on the days he feels unworthy of breath. I love you. Thank you for being my family. Evelyn." The tears came hard and fast. I covered my mouth, the letter shaking in my hands. Andrew dropped to his knees beside me and wrapped me in his arms. "She loved you so much, Mom," he whispered. "You were her family." I held him tightly, crying into his shoulder. She was the daughter I never had. We stayed like that, mother and son, held together by the love of a woman who had left the world but not our lives. Healing didn't come all at once. It came in tiny, almost invisible pieces. A smile he didn't force, a day with no tears, a night without waking from nightmares. One evening, months after the memorial, I passed by his room and found him standing at the window. The sunset flooded the sky in pink and gold. He wore the silver locket, Evelyn's final gift, and for the first time, his sorrow didn't look heavy. It looked peaceful. "What are you thinking about?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "Her, but not with pain anymore." We stood side by side, watching the sky melt into color. "Do you think she can see me?" he asked quietly. "I know she can," I said. He closed his eyes, letting the sunlight warm his face. "Good, because I want her to see that I'm trying." I rested my head on his shoulder. "She sees." He wrapped an arm around me, pulling me close. "And Mom?" he murmured. "Yes, sweetheart?" "Thank you for saving me." I looked up at him, tears softening my vision. But these tears felt different. "No, honey," I said with a trembling smile. "You saved yourself. I just stood beside you while you did." He smiled, truly smiled, a smile with life in it, a smile I hadn't seen in so long. "I think someday I'll be okay." "You already are," I whispered. He took a deep breath, watching the sun sink below the horizon. "That's the first time I've believed that," he said softly. We stood together, mother and son, bathed in the last golden light of day, holding the tender pieces of a love story grief tried to shatter. But love did not break. It transformed. It grew roots. It held on. Evelyn was gone, but her love lived on. In Andrew, in me, in every step he took towards the life she wanted for him. And as the sky shifted from gold to violet to night, I realized this was her final gift, a man reborn, not from perfection, but from forgiveness, from courage, and from a love that even death could not silence.